And 20 years on from the end of the Kosovo War, the former US President Bill Clinton's been honoured by the country's government for his role in orchestrating NATO's intervention that outed Serbian forces, ousted even.
Kosovo's president awarded Mr Clinton a Medal of Freedom for being a major supporter of the 78-day-long NATO air campaign that was crucial in ending the war.
Mr Clinton said it was an honour to stand against ethnic cleansing by Serbian forces.
Well, our former correspondent, former Foreign Affairs editor Tim Marshall covered the Balkans conflict and the Kosovo War. He's just released a revised version of his book Shadowplay that reflects on the period and the lessons learned, destined to be another bestseller, you so-and-so.
Possibly.
Why did you write it?
Because 20 years on, it's actually still simmering. You know, there's a generation of 20-year-olds now who are called Tony Blair, in honour of and Bill, in honour of what happened.
Is it really true?
Yes, it's true. There's lots of children called Tony Blair in Kosovo to this day. All of them about 20, 21 years old. Sorry, but I digress. We haven't actually solved it yet. It's not sorted yet. Some of the issues are still there. The Kosovo and Serbia are still at daggers drawn. Twice in the last year, the Serbian army's been put on full alert and moved to the border. I'm not saying there's going to be a war, but unless this big black hole at the centre of Europe is sorted, it's always going to be an issue. And some people say, well, so what? Well, how many refugees do you want heading up north? Very brief example. If it goes bang again, at which point the Bosnian Serbs in Bosnia, well, maybe I want to be part of Serbia now. The Kosovans in Macedonia say, maybe we want to join Kosovo. And on it unravels around the Balkans. You've got to solve it. It is simmering. Also, it's 20 years, and you know, it's not a memoir. It is actually what happened at the time, but it's also what has happened subsequently and why it's still simmering.
There are real misgivings from some analysts in Europe about the rise of the far right and the possibility of there being more war in Europe very soon in the coming years. How realistic do you think that is?
I don't think it's probable, but I think it's possible. And if it would start anywhere, it would be down there. Partly because of the reasons I said, and also because Mr. Putin in Russia is quite happy to try to destabilise areas. I mean, Putin has met the leader of Republika Srpska, this tiny little enclave in Bosnia, 8 times. You know, he's not known for meeting.
Remember the drama of Pristina Airport at the end?
That's when the Russians came in.
Yeah.
No, but yeah, and that is actually connected because the Russians would still like to destabilise this area because they don't want them moving towards the European Union. So, and when you're dealing with the tinderbox, oh yeah, I mean, it's all. We were there. We got to the airport at Pristina in '99, and the Russians had got there first. The Brits and the Americans then rocked up, and this is that famous occasion where
Mike Jackson, wasn't it?
Yeah, the American general Wesley Clark ordered General Mike Jackson just go through the Russians. At which point he said,
"That'll be World War III."
Well, he didn't quite say that. He said, "I'm not going to start World War III for you," and we didn't go through the Russians. So it's all that stuff about what happened and why it happened, and then. To bring it almost slightly up to date, we just took our eyes off the ball. Now, you covered the Iraq War. You were tip of the spear, as I remember, and you were heavily involved as well. 3 days before you crossed the border into Iraq, the leader of Serbia, Zoran Đinđić, was assassinated by a sniper's bullet in Belgrade. And no one even noticed because we'd taken our eyes off the Balkans again. And we've continued to take our eyes. And when we take our eyes off the Balkans, stuff happens.
One thing we are turning our attention to very briefly is what's happening in the Gulf near Iran today. How significant do you think what's going on with these oil tankers?
Well, I mean, we have a saying in journalism, 1, 2, trend. Now, this is the second time this has happened with the tankers. Another time, you're going to have to do something about it. At the moment, you've still got plausible deniability. The report into the first attack only said a state did this. It did not name the state. The suspicion is that Iran did it to signal we can close the Strait of Hormuz. 30% of the world's oil goes through every day. And that if it's them, and it's not proven, more signalling.
We have another saying in journalism, don't we? Don't wear denim in the studio. Tim Marshall.
It's not denim, it's linen, it's not denim.
This is Sky News Today. Coming up, we've got a lot more on the Tory leadership race. Next, stay with us.
Camera 12, stand up. Thanks for that. Stand up.